Today I posted a tweet from Zach Lambert that basically said, hey, you can believe in the Apostles' Creed and the incarnation and the resurrection and still believe that LGBTQ people should be affirmed and that Black Lives Matter and that this is not like a weird thing, that this is perfectly fine. And someone asked, so what about the Apostles' Creed? There's this line that says that Jesus descended into hell. What is that about? So with the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, the Athanasian Creed, all written sometime in the 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries, are getting at is this question of like, okay, Jesus died, he was resurrected 3 days later, what happened in between? And they were unanimous in saying that Jesus descended into hell. And they didn't just make this up whole cloth. They got it from the New Testament. 1 Peter chapter 3 says that Jesus was put to death in the body, made alive in the spirit, and after being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits. And then 1 Peter chapter 4 says that for this reason the gospel was preached even to those who are now dead. Ephesians 4 says something similar, that Jesus descended into the depths of the earth, and then when he ascended, he took many captives with him. In other words, he took those who were in prison in Sheol, Hades, hell, and then brought them up to heaven with him. And in the ancient church tradition, the Orthodox church tradition, this is called the Harrowing of Hell. The Harrowing of Hell, that Jesus died, went to hell, Hades, Sheol, the grave, proclaimed the gospel, and then rescued those who were trapped in the depths and brought them up into the abode of God, into God's loving embrace and presence. So why is it that most Protestants and evangelicals have never heard of this? Well, like most terrible things, you can blame John Calvin. John Calvin recited the creeds, knew the creeds, but when he was working on them, he came across this line, Jesus descended into hell, and he's like, not a fan. So he changed it to Jesus descended to the dead. Basically, Jesus was dead for 3 days, and then on the third day rose again, and that's the end of it. This whole proclamation to the spirits imprisoned that scripture itself says, John Calvin, like a lot of scripture, just ignored. But prior to John Calvin, this was just like a accepted part of Christian theology and orthodoxy. And then, nowadays you're lucky if you're at a church that even recites a creed. And if you do, many have changed it to the John Calvin version. He descended into the dead, and no one has to give any thought to this whole he descended into hell thing. I moved over to my chair so I could read you something. But for the ancient church fathers and mothers, it was a huge theme. Cyril of Alexander in the 400s said, going in his soul, Christ preached to those who were in hell, appeared to them as one soul to others. When the gatekeepers of hell saw him, they fled. The bronze gates were broken open. The iron chains were undone. The only begotten Son shouted with authority to suffering souls, and he said, come out to those in darkness, be enlightened. He preached to those in hell so that they might be saved and believe in him. Nowadays, it's common to believe that if you rejected Jesus in this life, that's it, you're doomed to hell, there's no chance to get out. But the early church did not agree with this idea, and Pat kind of found it ridiculous. If Jesus had already broken into hell, broken the chains, proclaimed the gospel, and brought people out of it, why would we think that he would not do that again, or just leave the doors open? And even in the book of Revelation, Jesus says, I hold the keys to death and Hades. And as Bradley Jersak likes to say, if Jesus is holding the keys to death and Hades, what do we think he's going to do with them? He's not locking the doors again. The doors of hell are open. People can leave whenever they want. And as we talked about yesterday, everyone will be forgiven of every sin and every blasphemy. And if it's not God who's holding people hostage in hell, they have the opportunity to leave at any point. And what Christological Universalism says, we believe that eventually they will.